Welcome to the I Know a Guy podcast. On today's episode, we're excited to bring to you an exclusive interview with a true legend in the world of treasure hunting, Shawn Cowles. Shawn's no ordinary treasure hunter. He cut his teeth working alongside the legendary Mel Fisher, a name that resonates with anyone passionate about uncovering hidden riches. As the host of Season 3 of Treasure Quest, a Discovery Channel special, Shawn searches for the Sacambaya treasure. Throughout today's episode, we'll dive deep into the challenges, triumphs, and heart-stopping moments that Shawn encountered during his time in Bolivia. We'll explore the incredible history behind the Sacambaya treasure and discover the strategies and technologies used in the search for this long-lost bounty, as well as others like the Atocha that sank off the coast of Florida, $450 million in treasure that was found by Mel Fisher and our guest Shawn Cowles. So like, share, and comment, and enjoy this episode. Shawn Cowles, thank you for being here. Treasure hunter. I've done a little bit of research on you, just a little bit. Met you a few months ago, and I was like, wow, it's fascinating. Somebody comes up to you and they go, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" "I hunt treasure." That's cool.
Yeah, it's a good. It's always a kind of a head turner. What?
How'd that start?
How did it start? Wow, when I was little, I grew up in the Berkshires, western Massachusetts, little town called Shelburne Falls, tiny little town. It's a historic town, has a bridge that's been turned into a bridge of flowers, and that's probably the most famous thing about it. It's a cool little town, but not a lot of people. And I think we were 7 years old, and we had bought this old house, a couple hundred years old, and we were lifting this house up and renovating it. I was helping my father, of course, and I remember underneath the foundation, I found a coin from 1798, and that just, I think that, and along with my mother, I remember when I was really little drawing like two pirate ships, and then I would fill it all in with stick figures, like swinging from one pirate ship to the other and battling and diving for treasure. It was just, most kids probably have sort of a fantasy of finding treasure. It kind of stuck with me, and I just kind of went for it. I got certified as a scuba diver when I was 12, and in western Massachusetts, of all places, which is not really a big scuba diving place, but just kind of stuck with it. So it was always in my head as a young man, and then as I became an adult, I pursued that by moving to Key West, which is a whole other story, which we might get to. But yeah, it was finding that coin, I think, is the thing that really kicked it off.
Scuba diving off Massachusetts, is that like, I'm thinking Great White and I'm thinking Jaws.
Yeah, that's right. Jaws was filmed there in that state. So, and I grew up, in the western part of the state, so up in the mountains, so lakes and rivers.
Wow.
And then a little bit off of Gloucester. But yeah, I just, as a young boy, just always fascinated by the thought of finding a treasure chest. And I guess it never left me enough for me to think it was a fantasy. I thought it could be a reality.
Yeah, adrenaline rush, still to this day.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Mel Fisher. That's a big name in Florida.
It's
a big name in the treasure hunting industry.
It is. Still considered today to probably be the world's greatest treasure hunter.
That's incredible. And you worked with him a little bit?
A long time, yeah. My career, when, so to kind of, go more on that story, 12 years old, I got certified. Then you get into junior high school, you kind of forget about that. You're doing what you do in high school, and girls become more interesting than everything else. So I wasn't scuba diving until I got out of high school and I was going to college. I was just going to a community college at that point. And I think I was 20, and I was flying to California for a family holiday and turned 21 on the flight. We got to Laguna Beach visiting family, and I was already, certified as a diver, but I had to do a refresher. And now, first time on the West Coast as a young man, I decided I was going to go and go diving off of Catalina Island. So I kind of got back into it at 21, and it reignited that fire. I came back to Massachusetts, and within a few years, I was on my way to Key West to work for Mel Fisher, and that started my career. I started working for Mel in 1992. All the way up until 2016. So I worked for Mel for 25 years.
So what? So the Atocha, am I saying that correctly?
No.
Okay, that's why I'm here.
It's pronounced the Atocha.
The Atocha?
Atocha, yeah. So the full name is Noresta Sonora de Atocha. Our Lady of the Field is how that translates. So we, for short, will say Atocha.
So the Atocha is this ship underwater that has a bunch of gold and stuff around it, on it. How does that whole thing work? You're diving and you're just finding stuff? I mean, let me give you perspective here. Like, this is like the ideal person to have on the show, producer Jake, because I'm into this stuff. But I've never found, the only thing I've ever found two things. One would be over in the Jenny Springs area in Gilchrist County. I found a harmonica brass reed about 2 feet deep. And I gave it to the owner, and I think it's from a Civil War relic.
Oh, like an old one. That's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
The other thing that I found, my mom remembered these soldiers about 3 inches high that were lead or some metallic one. Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
That were sitting on the her grandfather's bench inside of a shed out in Putnam County, Florida. And over time, that shed had rusted and fallen apart, and we were selling the property. And I'm like, I wonder if they're there. And my brother went out there about 5 years ago with a metal detector.
Awesome.
Not metal detector. We'd had it, but nothing really picked up. We just started digging, looking in the general area, and we found 17 of them under about 12 to 18 inches of dirt that just roots and debris over decades. And
That's great.
I'm into that stuff. How can just anybody go out there and go, oh, I told there's gold in this area? This is professional stuff. You need like equipment, you need expertise, and it's also in deeper water, maybe.
Yeah. Well, see, now you're actually part of the club. You're a treasure finder. You found stuff, you know, and that's what it is. So you know that feeling, right? It's like, wow.
Yeah.
And just the fact that you've uncovered something that's been sitting there for maybe, in this case, 50 years. So think about that when you're uncovering something that's been there for 1,000 years, hasn't moved from that one spot, you know. And when it's gold, then you're hooked. It's what we call gold fever. When you find gold, whether it be on land or under the ocean, when you find that, looks just like it did 1,000 years ago or 400 years ago, because gold is that noble metal. Nothing corrodes or adheres to gold. So pretty cool. Like, you know, when you saw that harmonica or those little soldiers, they're probably all encrusted or definitely tarnished, and there's a different patina to them. If it were gold, it would look like shiny new.
And you found it.
A lot of it.
Wow.
Hundreds and hundreds of pounds of it.
Wow.
So yeah, to answer your question about Mel and the Atocha and what it's like to dive on the Atocha, yeah, that's a huge production. I mean, we were a full-on company that was raising $3.5 million a year just to keep the expedition going, and that is paying for a couple of large ships. You know, one of them was 65, the other was a 90-foot vessel that has a huge beam on it, and it's got, you know, blowers. You ever hear about the mailbox?
Mm-mm.
This is a term that was it's actually a creation of Mel Fisher's, this mailbox. The mailbox is simply, if you can imagine, just a huge elbow, right? That's maybe, you know, the inside diameter of this big elbow is 15 feet across or so. And these two elbows are on the back of the ship. And the concept is, when you get over an area that you want to push the sand away underwater, you just, you know, you've already locked your vessel in place by a 4-point mooring, like stern, you know, both the port and starboard stern. I've got long anchors that go out, and then the
What was this called again?
The mailboxes?
The mailbox?
Okay. Yeah, it's called a mailbox, and it's ultimately just this huge elbow that we built and put on the back of the ship, and then have a system that allows it to lower down, and the opening encompasses the prop of the back of the ship, right? So the prop is generating energy to push the boat forward. So imagine if you were to take that energy and put a right angle on it, exactly, and push it straight down. Now what's going to do is push the sand away and expose whatever anomalies you had gotten from doing that metal detecting. Ultimately, this is big metal detecting, like side scan sonars or pulse induction systems that you're pulling from another boat. You'll get some indication that there's something metal under the water or under the ground down there. So that's why you know, there's a number of phases, right? You got to do the survey first. From the survey, then you bring the boat there with the mailbox. You lock it in position. You drop the mailboxes down, and you push the sand away. And then the final stage of all this is when us as divers dive into that hole that was just created by that mailbox, and go in there with metal detectors and find whatever anomalies there might be under there. So it's a massive process. You can just imagine, just from all of that, how much money it takes to do something like this.
Yeah, how regulated is that? It's
Very.
not, and even just internally, like, are there people on the ship like, okay, anytime this diver comes up, we're checking them?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, it's a well-oiled machine. You know, this is a very professional outfit, and in all groups that I've been involved with, it's a very professional approach. Very, you know, militarist. It's very sort of military in the sense that we're very safe. You know, there's a lot of safety nets put in place, and when you're diving, there's more risk, right? You know, if you're overdoing it, we're talking about the bends, we're talking about barotraumas, things like this. So yeah, we have a very specific checklist. You know, we'll rotate the type of diving that's happening. On the Atocha, it's not real deep. This is a pretty shallow water wreck site. You know, it's 60 feet max. The main pile, the mother lode of the Atocha, which was found in 1985, which you may or may not know was pretty impressive. It was 450 million in treasure in one pile.
That's incredible.
And it was 55 feet deep. And, you know, when they found this pile of treasure, it doesn't look like, you know, what you might think Hollywood would make it look like. It looks like a big reef. But really, those were all silver bars and cannons and ballast stones and chests of coins that just had all this coral growth on them. But the crazy thing is, on that main pile, there were lures.
That's what I was thinking about, the people
all
fishing.
Kinds of
Oh,
people.
I've caught so many grouper over that hole.
Yeah, exactly. So,
wow.
And it turns out it was 450 million of silver bars and silver coins. But again, to go back, that's a fairly shallow water wreck. There's not a lot of danger as far as you know, the bends and stuff. But when you're a dive team out there, you're diving all the time. You're probably doing 3 or 4 dives in a day, and you're rotating. You do your dive, you come up, next couple goes in, they do their dive, and you're working topside, and then another 2 guys go in. So you're rotating like every 3 or 4 people, or every 3 or 4 sets, if you will. And generally, you're in the water for 45 minutes to an hour on the Atocha site before you come up. But anyway, you know, it's a very well-oiled machine, very disciplined.
Security in terms of people going, oh, we know where the site is now, we're coming in.
That's a good question. Yeah. There have been issues, not so much in the more recent years, but in their early years, before Mel actually got claim, there's a whole story there about how Mel got, you know, the rights to this particular wreck site. But in the early years, there was a lot of people trying to come out and scoop it or poach it. And there was some shots fired across a couple bows.
Wow.
Yeah, there's some pretty crazy stories. There's a lot of great books out there. Search for the Atocha is a wonderful one by Eugene Lyons. There's a number of them, but there's some fascinating stories. So still today, yeah, there are plenty of weapons on board. We've not in recent years had to use them, but we are way out there. You know, it's 30 miles offshore. There's no land in sight. You're just out there all by yourself. This one boat, you know, and so any boat traffic that's going by.
Well, so state waters are what, 9 miles or something like that?
12.
12?
Yeah.
But you're not in state waters. You're in federal, right?
Yeah, it's a real interesting area there. The Atocha and the Margarita site. So the Margarita is the sister ship to the Atocha. And Mel has the rights to both. The organization, Mel obviously has passed on, but his son Kim and daughter Taffy Fisher are running the operation. They still have the rights, the salvage rights of both the Atocha and the Margarita. And here's the important language. Where they may lie. That's huge. Because where the main pile was found and where we have been working since then, and they're still working today, is a trail that's more than 12 miles northwest of that pile. So here's a little backstory. When the Atocha sank, it sank in a hurricane in 1622, in September of 1622. They had just left Havana, Cuba, loaded with treasure. They come up into the Gulf Stream. Well, they come into the Florida Straits, and they follow the Gulf Stream, right? And the Gulf Stream comes up the east coast of Florida, and then right around St. Augustine, they just take a hard right and head towards Spain. So they're only one day out of Havana, Cuba, loaded. Pretty late in the season. They already knew this, that, you know, to be leaving that late in the season, September, they were taking risk. They were pretty well aware at this point that hurricanes start to really flare up in that area in the late summer, early fall. I mean, you got to remember, Spain had been taking silver and gold from the New World for 350 years. So they'd already been doing it for almost 100 years by the time the Atocha sank. So they're pretty well versed in it.
Where's that gold coming from?
Good question. That's all coming from Central and South America. Lima, Mexico, a lot of the gold at that time was coming from Mexico, and then later Lima, Peru, Bolivia. but all of that area. It's the same area I was traveling with, recently.
Yeah. That's incredible.
But it really is incredible. It sank in a hurricane, 1622, together, the Atocha and the Margarita. There was actually 28 vessels in the fleet. 8 of them sank in this storm. The Atocha and the Margarita were the most valuable. The Atocha was the Almiranta, and the Margarita was the Capitana. And the Almiranta is the rear guard, and the Capitana is the front guard. So you can imagine 28 vessels in a fleet, the Capitana in the front, the Almiranta in the back, other vessels in the middle, and then even other smaller vessels might act as pilots that might be way in front of the Capitana, and then also behind the Margarita. So whenever they were in a fleet, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're all like really tight together. They might be spread out over 30, 40, 50 miles, but they're still, in essence, sailing together with the same mission. So 8 of those boats sank. Only 5 have been identified. There's still 3 out there missing.
Wow.
Yeah. But the Atocha and the Margarita were the most loaded with treasure, and they both sank off of Key West, Florida, about 27 miles southwest of Key West.
So take me from the 1600s to how some folks in America in 1985 or 75 or other missions maybe prior knew this information and knew this was there, but nobody in the 1800s got it or tried to?
No, that's a great question. Spaniards were incredibly good record keepers, right? So this is a tiny little country that was a massive power. Think about this, right? How big is Spain? It's not that big in the scheme of things, right? You compare it to us and Russia and things like that. But back then, they were one of the most powerful countries in the world. And they were, so they were going all the way from Spain to North and Central America and also over to the Orient, Manila. And they were taking and trading between these, they had massive commerce, 350 years. And they were incredibly good sailors and record keepers. So when the Atocha and the Margarita sank, they had very good record of that. Whenever a fleet like that leaves a port like Havana, they do a manifest in triplicate. So there was a copy of the manifest on the vessel. There was a copy of that manifest on another vessel in the fleet, and also a copy left at the port in Havana. Obviously, the manifest from the Atocha is gone.
Right.
But one of those other 2 was still, and still is today, in the archives in Seville, Spain.
Wow.
So it's very well documented as to what was on board the ship. And the Spanish government, when they lost it, it was a huge loss to them. I'd say close to 10% of the king's wealth, that one fleet. So it was such a big loss that he actually, or the government, looked for the Atocha for over 70 years. So they did, for 70 years, keep going back to this area and look for the Atocha Margarita. They never found the Atocha. They did find some of the Margarita, but not nearly enough to recoup it all. So, again, 70 years of looking. Right. After that, people start to forget about it, right? And I don't know that there was any real attempts in the 1700s or 1800s. It might have been a couple little ones, but nothing with any success. And it wasn't until Mel started looking, and he started looking in 1969. Took him 16 years to find the mother lode of the Atocha. So it's not easy, but with a lot of patience and perseverance and a lot of will.
And try to keep convincing investors that, hey, we're going to find it.
You got it.
So what's
a lot of money.
Well, what separates, so you've been doing this for a while. You were season 3?
Treasure Quest?
Treasure Quest, Discovery Channel?
Yes.
What separates I would call you professional. Yep. Number one, you're dive certified. You've done all these things.
I make a living at finding treasure.
Right. That's like that's a cool gig. How do you what separates someone who is good? Because Mel Fishers has been kind of referred to as like the mecca, the mentor, the guy that's
real pioneer.
What separates him from this other guy who's got $1 million in the bank and has got a ship off the coast of somewhere?
That's a great question. Personality.
Yeah.
Right. So Mel didn't have any money. You make a great point. How do you do it if you don't have any money? Because it's a very costly venture. Mel was probably the most charismatic guy I've ever met in my life. And he could sell. He would just get you caught up in the dream. He was really great at selling the adventure. And that's what really everybody wants to be a part of, right? What is life about? You want some excitement in your life. And Mel could sell you that. Said, "You come with me, and I'll give you the greatest adventure you've ever been a part of." And that's how he sold it. And I don't know if you know this, but my history and career with Mel segued from being a professional diver for him and working as a salvage diver to running the investor relations department. So I segued into Mel's job.
Wow.
And I did that for 10 of those 25 years. I raised all the money to keep the expeditions going.
Wow.
Which is what Mel did. And he started as a diver, but then ultimately, the only way to keep the business running was to raise the money. And that's why the natural progression was for him to go into the office and raise money and go out on the street and talk to people. And that's what I did.
So the Sakambaya, did I say that correctly?
You did. Sakambaya.
I'm working hard on it.
It's a great
I'm
name.
trying.
The
It really is.
Sakambaya.
What does that word have a meaning?
It's the name of the valley. So the indigenous, it's the indigenous name to the valley. I don't know if it has a direct meaning to something particular.
So we're in South America.
Mm-hmm.
We're in Bolivia, and we're looking for
more Spanish treasure.
Right.
Yeah, which is, obviously my area of expertise. That's ultimately what I generally am looking for is Spanish colonial treasures, 15, 16, 1700s, silver and gold. And all of this silver and gold on the Atocha and the Margarita and the Pilar and any of these other shipwrecks I worked on all ultimately came from Central and South America. A lot of that, Bolivia, Lima, and Peru. And Cartagena. So all of those countries, that's where all of this gold and silver was coming from. So this venture, the Sakambaya, I was working for Mel when Discovery Channel started calling on me to be a consultant for the show Treasure Quest for season 1. And I had a good friend who was on the show, and they were getting to a point where they were finding some interesting things underwater. Season 1, Snake Island, they found an anchor, and they needed someone who was an expert in, shipwreck artifacts. And she called on me, and they said, "Would you, do a scene in season 1 where we're talking about this anchor and you're helping us identify it?" I said, "Sure." And then from that point on, I became a consultant, and we talked a lot about a lot of other artifacts they were finding, and that went into season 2, and then ultimately it turned into being the lead character in season 3. But in each one of these shows, it was Spanish colonial treasure. In the season 3, the Sakambaya treasure, it was a really fascinating story. It's about this rogue sect of Jesuits, and if you look at Spanish history, it's pretty fascinating. They had dominated Central and South America at this point. They've already been there almost 200 years. And had converted a lot of the indigenous people to Christianity, and they had built these cities there and mints, and were taking all of this great wealth out of there and bringing it back to Spain. The way they did that is they hired the Jesuits, and the Jesuits were just really good at conversion, helping convert Indians or indigenous folk to Christianity. They were just skilled at that. Whereas if you read a lot of the history, they talk about how the Spanish themselves were maybe a little bit too rough around the edges to be able to kind of get people to believe. So the Jesuits are the ones that really had the great success. So they were ultimately working for the Spanish government to help convert, and then they were running these mints and overseeing all the production of silver coinage and bullion and shipping it back to Spain for a long time. Hundreds of years, 150 years at least. And then new king, there's been a number of kings throughout this process. In 1767, this king, King Charles V, says, "You know what? I don't really trust the Jesuits anymore. I think that they're skimming off the top. I think that why are we paying them anymore? Why do we need them? We've been ruling this country for a couple hundred years." And he decides to expel them from all of the Americas. It's a huge deal. So these Jesuits get wind of this, that they're about to be expelled. And so the story of the Sakambaya treasure goes that there's this rogue sect of Jesuits that get wind of this, that they're going to be expelled, and they start hiding a massive, massive hoard of gold and silver in this little tiny valley up in the Bolivian Andes. And It's a pretty fascinating story. Of course, you got to tune in to find out. But some of the basics are that possibly a huge tunnel and underground cavern, was built to hide all of this. So when these Spanish conquistadors came marching in to push them all out, they would have been gone, and the monasteries and the mints were all empty, and there was no treasure there to be found. And they're like, oh, all right, well, I guess they've already left, and they'd keep moving on. And then these Jesuits, after calmed down 5, 6, 10 years, would come back, get all the treasure, and reestablish themselves in North America where Spain wasn't. Although it's some interesting stuff maybe we can talk about later that's happening in North America, where we're finding evidence of Spanish settlements and the Jesuits way further in North America than we ever thought had happened. That's kind of what I'm working on now. But so that is the story of the Sacambaya, that there was a massive amount of treasure, up to $1 billion in gold and silver. And I led a team there to go and look for it, and we found some fascinating artifacts that kind of gave the story a lot of credence. We found some amazing pieces that proved that there was definitely something happening there that was, unknown to the Spanish government.
So when you go to a place like that, you're in another country.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of permissions and relationships do you have to create with, I guess, locals to even say, why are these people here on our land?
Absolutely. Yeah. You're creating relationships, and that's a big part of, again, I go back to Mel and his, the charisma and the ability to build and forge relationships with people. That's a big part of the job, gaining trust. So I played a big part of that role. And then, of course, Discovery plays a big part of that role. They're a well-known name, and they pay well.
Right.
So the village did well.
Yeah.
But, it's an agreement, as we go into it, that, it'll be a win-win. They're going to get a lot from it, as well as, if there's anything found that...
Because it doesn't do any good just sitting there forever, right?
Right. A big part of generally what we'll do in a situation like that, in any country that I've been in where we're negotiating, is... that we're going to, any of the artifacts that are unique would stay in that country, of course. We would build a museum in that village for them, and they would be able to reap all the benefits and proceeds from admission and from the exhibit itself. And again, unique artifacts would stay in the country. And then the hope is that when you're finding like millions of coins, hundreds of thousands of coins, granted, these are all handmade back then, so they're all unique. But after a while, when you're looking at 300,000 coins, it's like, okay, do we have to put every single one of these coins in an exhibit? This is where private sector can make some money. It's like, okay, what we would like to do is divvy up these coins. If there's any that are really unique, those will stay in the museum. But all these other ones, they have a monetary value. Like these can be cleaned up, conserved, and documented, and then sold to the private market at a pretty good price. And that's where these private sector groups like ours would be able to reap some benefit, or try to make some profit off of the whole thing, selling coinage like that. So when you get into this, you're always negotiating, and there's a deal. That government gets a percentage, we get a percentage. Yeah.
So you get into this valley in a terrain that maybe not the easiest to go across.
Intense.
So Discovery Channel, along with any other TV program or show, has a really, really good knack for making things look scary.
Sure.
But there are some really dangerous elements, no? There's
absolutely.
Scary situations you've run into, whether in that valley or elsewhere. There's a picture, I see you're in a hole, or going down into one, or way underwater. Like there's some danger there.
The reason Discovery wants to make a show out of it is because it's got those elements already. So there's a lot of exciting elements in the industry, so it makes good TV already. Does TV need to sort of sensationalize it? Yeah, that's how they sell advertisement. It's not that they're throwing a lot of stuff in there. It's just that not everything's in real time, right?
Right. Yep.
About production.
Yep.
You've got it. This is we film this, we edit it, and then you only got so much time to be on TV, so you got to make a story from all of that. So in reality, things don't happen that quick.
And we also have a short attention span, so we need to be entertained.
That's for sure. Yeah. The general public needs to. There's a pretty obvious formula, like any of these shows, right? There's this is going to happen. There's going to be some drama, and at the end, there's a resolution. Yeah, that's a model that everybody follows in that industry.
But it's dangerous. You're going into some tunnel you've never been in before.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, there's real danger there.
So the episodes are out there, and people can watch them on Discovery. Yeah. And I'm not going to tell you that I haven't because I've seen some.
Oh, good.
But one of the ones that sticks out in my brain is it appears that you guys are in a tunnel. The rainy season is coming, and you're seeing water come in from the wall.
Yeah.
And you have this body of water. And the first thing that comes to my mind was that cave incident with the soccer players, where they went into this cave and then got to the point where they couldn't get out.
That's a very real situation.
And so as far as you guys running into potential issues, can you think about like the scariest moment you've ever had?
Yeah. Yeah, I had some pretty amazing moments there. And actually some of that, in the Sacambaya Valley, we had a pretty big fall from Jeremy, my right-hand guy there. We were rappelling about 800 feet into a crevasse. So we're in the Bolivian Andes, and we're way up. We're at about 13,000 feet in this mountain range. And, this is this whole area where there's all these old mines, abandoned mines, Spanish mines from, silver mines. And a lot of my belief was that they didn't build a bunch of new tunnels and things. They were using these old mines, digging further deeper down that, the conquistadors would never really find it. And they were just using sort of old abandoned mines that they would have them all closed up, but that's where they were stashing all this gold and silver. So we were way up at the top of a mountain where this mine started, and this mountain kind of, if you can visualize, kind of has a big crack right at the peak, and we were up there and we were rappelling down through that to see how far down we could go, because we believed that some of the tunnels that were down here went further down. So that just seemed to be our best access. It turned out it was, but it was a pretty serious rappel, and we don't have a huge amount of staff out there because we're packing everything in and packing everything out. We didn't come in there with helicopters and all of that, So there was, I don't know exactly how it happened, but one of the lines broke, and Jeremy fell probably 40 something feet. He got pretty banged up, and so he fell, and we're at the bottom of this thing. So in order to get any help to him, we had a medic, and she had to rappel down there too, and she was not a rappeller. She doesn't have experience with this, so it took a while for us to get her down, and that was a bit sketchy. But I wouldn't say that was my scariest situation. I think that's a question I get asked a lot, and I think the story I tell the most is about a dive, and this was in Guam. So a lot of my diving career, I was part of a team called the U.S. Deep Wreck Diving Team, and we were a real specialized team. We were mixed gas, all closed circuit technology, trimix, and our specialty was that, we could kind of fill this niche between recreational diving and commercial or submersible diving. There's a lot of shipwrecks that are in the 150 to 500 feet range, but that's beyond recreational dive limits, and it's probably too expensive to justify bringing submersibles into that world. So it was a niche that we kind of filled as the U.S. Deep Wreck Diving Team, and we were a specialized salvage team using mixed gas and closed circuit. We were on a project in Guam, a Spanish galleon, sank in 1690, called the Pilar, and Guam is right on the Marianas Trench. It's a really fascinating and beautiful place to dive. The water is crystal clear. It's like the springs here, like you're underwater, you can see for 150, 200 feet. Same there. I mean, we were making dives to 300, 350, 400 feet, and you could look up and see the boat.
Wow.
Pretty incredible. Problem is, unlike the Florida Keys, where when you have tidal flow and current, it's lateral, you can kind of expect that, okay, I'm going to hang out right here and just kind of head into the current, and we're going to hang on a decompression line, and you just stay there and fine. In Guam, because it's thousands of feet deep there, there's these upwellings. So when there's tidal flow, it's not really tidal flow, it's these big upwellings that come up at a certain time. So they're not pushing you this way, they're wanting to push you to the surface. And that's a problem when you're on a decompression dive, right? A decompression dive is all about staying at a particular depth for an allotted amount of time so that you can properly off gas. So when things are trying to push you up, it's putting your health at risk.
Sure.
So there was this one particular dive, Andy Matrosi, who's a very well-known name in the treasure hunting business too. He worked for Mel Fisher, and he was part of what we call the Golden Crew. The Golden Crew was the crew that was there when they found the main pile in 1985. I came on a number of years after that. Andy Matrosi was one of the two divers that actually first saw the mother lode, the pile. And I was fortunate enough to work with him on this project in Guam. He and I were doing this decompression dive. We were probably at about, I think our stop at this point was at about 150 feet. We were probably on a 210-foot dive or something. I don't remember exactly. But we were at a decompression stop that was quite deep, and one of these upwellings started to happen. And I don't know if you're familiar, but to kind of reiterate, there's a big line that's attached to the boat topside and comes down and has a 250-pound weight on it. That's our decompression line.
Okay.
So, because, when you make a dive to 300 feet for 15 minutes, you're obligated to maybe 2.5 hours of decompression. That means on your way up, you're stopping at 10-foot increments for a certain amount of time, total deco time of maybe 2.5 hours.
Wow.
So you're in the water a long time, decompressing, just waiting. We were at that stop at 150 feet, and the current was so strong. We have a harness. It's a full harness, and it has a ring right, kind of right at your buckle.
Mm-hmm.
And then we clip into that. We have a John line that clips into the decompression line, and that holds you in position, and then you just stay there and decompress. Well, this current was so strong that it snapped Andy's John line, and I was like right with him. I was like slightly below him, and all of a sudden he's gone.
Oh, wow.
And he's just moving. He was flying. I was like, oh boy. So the protocols, you stick together. So I started pulling myself up against the John line, trying to get to the deco line to unclip. I couldn't do it. It was so strong. I had to cut my line.
Wow.
So I ended up just kind of cutting my line and then just, turn around like a skydiver, like one of those flying squirrels trying to, and caught up to him and then communicated to say, you okay? Yeah, we're okay. Okay, you keep our depth. I'm gonna shoot a bag. And so I shoot we have this whole deco bag that we shoot up that lets topside know what's happened, that we've been blown off the decompression line. And then they should send a small tender boat out, because when we get to our 20-foot stop, we have to go to 100% oxygen. And now we don't have it because we just got blown off of our line from the boat, right? So that's the protocol, is we have a tender boat that comes and then drops these long whips down with a regulator on it that's giving you 100% oxygen, because we're changing our gas mixture on all these stops as we come up to help push out the nitrogen out of our system. So it's very technical, right?
Yeah.
So in that situation, it was very important that we maintained our depth. And when you're in a situation like that, you could quickly get out of sync and float to the surface.
How does equipment just break? How does that just happen?
It's you never know. Stuff happens. It was very strong current. He must have had a little nick in the line or something, just from massive use. I mean, we're working hard on these things, and it's pretty intense. So we don't know for sure, but it happened.
So I read something somewhere where something happened where you guys hit a storm on a boat one time, and you jumped out the back of the boat.
Oh yeah, that was on the Atocha site too. Yeah, yeah, lots of adventures on the Atocha site.
What happened there? You guys might be pulling a boat or towing something, and you jumped out. I'm
trying to remember.
And
so many different
cut it loose or something, set the boat loose or something. I don't know, set it free. I don't know if it was something you guys were towing that was of historic nature, and it was going to ruin it if you guys stayed connected.
Somebody had written this somewhere.
I saw it somewhere. Yeah,
it could. There's been a number of times. I think we had a survey boat, like a 25-foot boat, being towed behind a boat. We got in a big storm. The boat that was towing lost power, so then the tow line and the towboat, I think, got turned around and the line got tied up into the prop, and so we were at risk of damaging or swamping that boat. So we had to let it go.
Okay,
like just kind of let it go from the big boat, and I think that was probably the situation you read about. So I dove in the water with just a mask and a knife.
Yeah.
Well, the survey boat was mine.
Oh, okay,
So
I got you.
it's like, that's my boat.
Yeah, that can't happen.
So I just swam out to the boat, and I was in a storm and a big seas and lightning and rain and everything, and I was cutting the line out from under the prop, and then got into the boat and got it situated and started it back up and drove it back to the boat. That might have been the scenario, but that's a regular thing. That's not a big deal.
That's not a big deal.
That happens a lot. Stuff like that.
I've been on a boat and lightning and thunder happens and I get scared. So you're doing something different there. That's scary to most people, I think.
When you're working on the water, 300 days a year, you run into those types of things a lot. But it's always an adventure. There's always a lot of unpredictable things that'll happen. And even when you're got a lot of safety nets in place,
Sure.
There's always going to be things. You got to be ready for those things. And that'll happen in the jungle too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of jungle, I guess I saw a picture of tarantulas on your back or something, like big spiders. Like, no way.
They're harmless.
I'm not doing any of that.
That was actually in Bolivia. That was in those mines. There's they're indigenous to that area.
Are they all over in the mines?
They are.
Wow.
I didn't know that. Luckily, I don't have an issue with spiders, but they're big guys. Yeah, you saw that one.
Oh, yeah.
It's like big as my shoulder.
Well, I watched Arachnophobia when I was younger, and it scarred me for life. So
That and
spiders
Jaws.
but yeah. Now, Jaws is interesting. So I fish in St. Augustine.
Yeah.
used to go out to about waist deep of water with a big thing of mullet on the hook. And one time I went out, a mullet, a piece of mullet.
I thought you said mold.
I'm sorry. No. Yeah, they like the mildew. It had been dipped in menhaden oil, and so I get out. It's low tide, so the water's not even sandy anymore. It's like mud on the bottom almost. It feels like silt. And this big swell comes up, and when the swell comes up, I see this dark shadow goes. I've been out there for years. That's the last time I've been below in deeper than waist deep. It was about 15 years ago. I'll never do it again.
Bull shark,
Big I don't know what it was. It must have been just cruising through. Probably wanted nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
But I was not messing around with it. So Discovery Channel, here's my question. Do you like run into other people that are like on, Alaskan bush people and Bering Sea gold and all that?
Yeah.
Is there like a convention? Everybody gets together or?
There's definitely a club, right? You're all talent for Discovery. So yeah. I've run into a couple of people from other shows. It's not like we all get together at a private, conference or anything, but I've had the opportunity to run into a couple others, and yeah, it's nothing. I wouldn't say that I have forged these amazing friendships with all these other talents from shows, but yeah, but once in a while.
But I find myself probably like a kid on Christmas morning with presents. Those shows are like that. Your show. And the other show's like, what are they going to find?
Right.
That's so interesting to me. And
yeah, good.
Because you have that something inside. I don't know that everybody has it. Jake, you got it? Like finding new stuff, discovering something?
Yeah. I do.
Gold fever. That's
what
we call it.
Well, when you're looking and then up in the Smoky Mountains, well, there's actually gold used to be in northern Georgia and Tennessee. It's like, well, where is it? Maybe there's more. Maybe nobody's messing with it. But, it's really cool. So if someone wants to get into treasure hunting, what do they need to do? Clearly, if you're going to dive, you need to be certified. You need to go that direction. But is there like a school or something?
No, there really isn't. I think getting involved with private sector folks like myself, Mel Fisher Organization, there's a couple of great groups that are out in the Bahamas right now. But there's not a lot of people doing it professionally, and at least professionally and above board. There's definitely some people out there that we would call pirates. Don't get involved with them. That's not what we're trying to do. And still, even us as treasure hunters, private sector, I like to refer to ourselves as historical shipwreck recoverers. Before I got involved in land find stuff, because we're very, we take a very archaeological approach to our expeditions. We're not just there to rape and pillage, in which we tend to get a bad rap from the academia world, but that's not our approach at all. I mean, if you look at the Mel Fisher Organization and you look at the museum that was set up that is a non-for-profit that is there for the people, that's always our approach, and I think that that's important for anybody that's getting into the industry. Don't just think that you're going to get into it, get rich because you're going to find a bunch of treasure and that's instant money. It's really not about that. I think you need to get into it because you have a love of history. And you really want to expose that and share that with people, because it's really fascinating to think about, what happened right here in High Springs and in Gainesville 400 years ago. the Spanish were up here.
Mm-hmm.
Bellamy Road.
Yep.
I mean, this was the route. That's the old Camino Real. The Camino Real goes all the way through, South America, and that was the main route of the Spanish. There's pieces of 8 on Bellamy Road, I guarantee it. So I actually have some interest in pursuing some things around here in Bellamy Road and seeing what kind of Spanish history is here. But it's really about the love of the history and bringing that to light and sharing that with people. That's why you should be into the world of treasure hunting.
So the Atocha and then the Valley, those are the ones that get the kind of the exposure because one was the most ever, one could be the most ever, and it's, of course, there's a show about it that you host. Are there other finds that you've had that have been just like really cool that just maybe don't get the exposure of the media?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
On land?
Land is a new world for me. I spent the majority of my young adult life underwater looking for shipwrecks and mostly Spanish shipwrecks, some French. So in working with Discovery is the first real serious land find that I was involved in. But it was just a natural fit because it was Spanish, Spanish colonial, and all that treasure that we were looking for is basically the treasure that would have been brought out and loaded on these ships. So I'm very familiar with the type of artifacts that we were looking for and the culture and, how they would make it and, what kinds of things to look for if, there was signs that there was a mine or a mint there. And so that's how I got involved with that. And now that has segued into me getting some calls for some other projects that are also Spanish, but on land and right here in North America.
Well, in a lot of Florida was a Spanish land grant, right?
It was.
You see it still to this day on old plats and stuff. So it's there's definitely a lot of history, I know for sure. And
a lot of history. In
so
Florida.
if you need me to come along with you, I don't dive. I don't rappel down the caves.
You float, though.
I do. I float very well. Floating is not a problem. You don't have to release a float. I'll send down a rope to you.
we could do a mobile podcast. You could come and
that'd be cool.
And we could interview all the people that are doing this. There's some fascinating stories out there. This story that I'm looking at right now is in Arizona.
Oh, that's cool.
Superstition Mountains.
Wow.
Pretty fascinating stuff going on over there right now.
Yeah, well, it's takes, I guess, professionals. I'm not one. I'm an amateur. Now, so my big thing is shark's teeth. Those are easy.
And that's great treasure, too.
$10.
Sand dollars?
Yeah, sand dollars. They're $1 each. And actually, arrowheads.
Yeah.
Arrowheads, that's one right here. That was found about 600 yards from here under a golf course.
Wow.
They were digging a irrigation line. I was out there and
That's
boom,
a big
it popped.
one.
Yeah, the spear point, I guess. But it's so those for me. I suppose if it was gold, and I realize the state's going to want their cut. I'm not saying I'd take it and melt it down. Okay, I'm not asking you to comment. Yeah, that's not the moral and ethical standard. I'd be considered.
You lose a lot of value if you were to do that.
I'd be considered a pirate too.
Yeah,
okay?
and you'd be
Well, that's interesting. You said value. So you're saying there's more value in leaving it in its original form than just melting it down to some block of gold.
Yeah. So when you find gold like that, there's going to be, in most cases, if it was government gold on a shipwreck or being loaded or being sent back to Spain, there's markings on that. And that is where the value is. So you're looking at markings from 400 years ago, the Spanish inventory numbers, the carat weight of it, the maker's mark, all of those things are really that's what helps tell the story. Otherwise, it's just a lump of gold.
Right.
You find a gold bar, okay, that was obviously manipulated, was smeltered down, made into a bar from somebody. So there's some story there, right? There's some history there. And then you'll see those markings, XX111, 23, ... and a half carats, 23 and a half carats. So now you're starting to kind of imagine what was happening 400 years ago in the story. That's where the value is.
So I think we have a gold
History.
bar. I think it's the last attachment on those pictures. And that has some kind of stamping on there.
Yeah.
That came from your pictures.
Probably. I can tell you exactly what the markings meant. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be cool. There it is.
You have, so you see that? It's kind of upside down, but you see the little XX?
I do.
And then a 1. That's 21.
Okay.
And then each dot represents a quarter of a carat. So that's 21 and 3/4 carats pure.
Wow.
Still the same weight measurement we use today for carat weight, right? 24 would be absolute pure. So that bar is 21 and 3 carats pure.
Where do you know where that came from?
Pure. This is from the Margarita, sister ship to the Atocha. And you see the outline of another little ridge there. It looks like it's a bunch of little dots and IPV.
Yes.
That is the stamp of the assayer, the gentleman responsible for producing that bar and telling us exactly what the purity is. That's a very important figure in the mint. He's the mint master,
Okay.
the assayer. And so this is all government stamped bullion being made in the New World. It's being shipped back to Spain. That was loaded on the boat. That's an official piece. And you can also see the two clips at the bottom of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hand-snipped piece.
Wow. Well, why would they do that versus leaving it rounded, or did it come off with another piece or something?
Yeah, they probably were making bars that size. They just wanted them to all be about that weight, that size. But it was a very crude way of making it. This was in a sand cast. So they basically had a table like this, and we call these sometimes finger bars. So that mint master or somebody in the mint in this sand would just go like that with their fingers, and then they'd pour that molten gold into that little trough that he just dug out with his finger.
Wow.
And there you go, gold bar.
Did Spain try to make claim to the Atocha and the gold?
Good question. They didn't try, because when this was happening, when Mel was started to find artifacts and he was starting to get some attention, Spain at the time wasn't really interested. And this was in the 70s. And they had a lot of other things going on in their world, government-wise, and 300 years ago that this ship sank. So they didn't really put up a big protest or say, hey, that's ours. At this point, they just really didn't make a big fuss. It was our government that did. It was the state first. The state of Florida came and said, whoa, wait a minute. You're finding what? You're finding gold?
You mean we can put more money in our coffers?
That means it belongs to us.
Right.
And that's where this amazing fight went on, like $10 million in 8 years. And Mel fought with the state of Florida. And then finally, when the state realized that they didn't have much, they weren't going to really win this fight, they brought in the government. And then the government came in and started fighting. And it went all the way to the federal Supreme Court.
Wow.
And the federal Supreme Court, in a 5-4 ruling, after 8 years of, Mel continuing to work, but only under the supervision and guidance of the state and government, meaning literally they had an armed guard on our boats.
Wow.
Watching everything. And all the treasure that was being found had to just go up to Tallahassee and go into a jail cell. And nothing could be distributed to any of his investors for 8 years. You can imagine how hard it was to run a business like that. Long story short, goes to the federal Supreme Court, 5-4 ruling, and it's awarded back to Mel Fisher and Treasure Salvers, Inc. 100%.
Wow.
Finders keepers. Not only did the state lose and the government lose, but they had to give everything back that they had already been taking. And now, even today, if you were to go to the Mel Fisher organization down in Key West and buy an artifact, no tax. They don't even get a tax on the pieces that he sells. So it kind of backfired on the state and the government. That changed all the rules, though. Since then, all those rules have been changed. Now UNESCO is very involved, and now it's very hard for anybody to go find anything. And if it was a government vessel, there's admiralty claim. That government, let's say Spain lost a ship in Lake Okeechobee.
Okay.
They can come get it, and we can't do anything about it.
Spain can come get it?
Yep. If it was a government vessel, admiralty claim. If it was a vessel that belonged to the crown. So
if there's a ship that was by... I don't know who else would actually have a ship in those waters, but if it's not in federal waters, okay, the French, if it's not in federal waters and it's not in state waters, who gets it?
If it's a government ship, they have ownership.
Now, who made that rule? The different governments kind of came together like a NATO thing or something?
Exactly. UNESCO.
Wow. Okay. That's what the acronym, I guess.
Uh-huh. Yep. So that all kind of started after Mel won.
That's
set
fascinating.
Precedence. Yeah, it's fascinating.
So
where do you personally stand on this? Because it seems like there's a lot of argument and issues with claim from like a law perspective, but also ethical perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Ben, I think it was you telling me about there's a part of the Native American community that doesn't appreciate people taking arrowheads and not giving it to them or a museum. But like, where do you stand with that? Because I'm sure they're like finders keepers, absolutists. But what's your thing?
It's a tough question to answer. I'm kind of I try to be democratic in the way. I think that if an organization is putting a lot of energy into uncovering that history, then they need to be compensated. If someone were to come forward that had an actual claim, let's say I found a bunch of Spanish treasure here, and it was from a mint, and I found it in, the Santa Fe River, and it all came from a mint out of Bolivia. And Bolivia said, hey, that's ours. Yeah, I think that, I mean, it was taken from them, right? So it's a tough one. It's a tough one. But I'm always willing to listen to the other side and try to come to a compromise, unless it's big government. Spain came, let's just look at that, right? Spain. Well, Spain came here to the New Worlds and forced their way in, killed a lot of indigenous people, and took over the land and took all of their resources, right? Do I think that they're entitled to it? Not so much, no. But I think that Bolivia, Lima, Mexico, I think they might have a claim on some level.
Who were home to the gold, right? Where it came from, where it was mined from.
It's their natural resources that were taken, and it's their culture that was compromised and attacked.
So it's more of a reparations thing for you instead of a magical ancestral claim type of.
I think so thing. For me. Yeah. I mean, and I've always, I would definitely get into, if I'm getting involved in a bigger production where I'm going to go out and actually pursue something that has some real credence, I would first, try to be neighborly, and go and talk to the people that might own that land or the villages. We always do that. That's what we were doing in Bolivia. We made great relationships before we didn't just go in there and say, hey, we're going to go do this. We asked permission, and talk to that village in Sacambaya. I would do the same thing here, if it was, but if I found something that I didn't know, like that example where I found a bunch of coins that belonged to a mint in Lima or that came from Lima in the Santa Fe River or something, well, is Lima really going to come look for it? I mean, if they did, I might consider giving them something, but I put out all the money to look for it.
Right. And there's laws right now, federal and state laws, though, on some things, right?
So that's a pretty poor example because the reality is I wouldn't be able to take it from the Santa Fe River.
Isn't there a percentage, though? Isn't there a percentage that if found, I thought where you can get some and the state gets some.
Yeah.
And so I had the opportunity years ago to go. So in Tallahassee, they have the museum there. I don't know if you've ever been there. That's the History Museum. Yeah. They've got a really cool setup back there where they have these cannons sitting in water with batteries hooked up like spark plugs and stuff. I guess that's trying to preserve it.
Electrolytic reduction.
There we go. I don't know the names of it, but I can describe it.
Now you do.
So I got a tour behind the scenes. There's a little elevator that's back there, and you go up the elevator to the top floor where the hanging chads were from the 2000 election, actually. Now they've all been thrown away. And downstairs in the museum is this replica map of St. Augustine. It's like 400 or 500 years old.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Upstairs is the real one.
Nice.
And nobody really knows that. I'm like, oh, this is the real one right here. You can't touch it, but it's sitting right there. I'm like, that's really cool. But the gold coins, I want to say they have gold coins down below. I don't know where those came from.
Probably Spanish.
Yeah, and I guess probably from some wreck or something. But I don't know. I get it, and I'll tell you, I've dug quite a bit, but several times for arrowheads on private property. Yeah. And I usually give them to the owner because I don't want them. It's just a thrill of finding them.
Exactly.
Now, if I'm spending thousands of dollars on the next, to find stuff, and it's like, okay,
you've got investors. They're the only reason you were able to go do a major expedition, like somebody believed in you, but with the understanding that they're going to reap some sort of reward. So, then it becomes a business, and then you've got to be able to turn some profit from some of that. So,
and I'm not sure why they wouldn't want to share in giving some profit, considering they're doing nothing to get something that they couldn't either find or didn't know where it was at. So.
That's exactly right. And in most cases, that's exactly right. It's only big government.
So not to pry too much, Arizona, is that a Spanish type thing? Or
it is. Yeah, Spanish colonial. Well, more Jesuit stuff. Wow. Ultimately, we think that they, remember that story about the Jesuits, right? Well, it's funny. This could be, it's very possible, but it's also a little bit far-fetched. But hey, we've proven things before that were far-fetched. This could be connected to Sacambaya. That there was some writings that kind of referred to that group, that rogue sect that I was talking about in Bolivia, that I was looking for their treasure, that they were going up into this area in Arizona. Wouldn't that be fascinating?
Yeah.
That just by coincidence, well, not totally coincidence, but I actually make the connection from Superstition Mountains to the Sacambaya treasure. Maybe we don't find the treasure of Sacambaya in Bolivia. Maybe we find it up here.
That'd be impressive. That'd be incredible.
That would be amazing.
That would make incredible news, wouldn't it?
It sure
That'd
would.
Get attention. So you're a world traveler.
Yeah.
You get to see the whole world while doing treasure hunting.
That's probably one of the best perks. Yeah, I love that.
And you mentioned you dirt bike or something, you and your Your wife?
Yeah, that's kind of a funny story how that all happened. We have 2 girls. We became empty nesters right around the time I wrapped season 3 of Treasure Quest. Our girls went off to college, and Adele, my wife, equally adventurous, Australian girl. When I got home from that, and the girls were leaving the house, she's like, "Okay, I'm sick of you having all the adventures. Now that we don't have the girls here, I want to go on an adventure." So she's the one that spearheaded this trip. And the trip was, she wanted to ride dual sport motorcycles from our front door, Key West, Florida, the southernmost point of North America, all the way down to the southernmost point of South America, Ushuaia. And we wanted to do it all off-road and back-road. She has some history with motorcycling. When she grew up in Australia, there's the Gun Barrel Highway in Australia. She did that when she was 18 on a bike. That's pretty hardcore.
Sure.
I don't know if you're familiar with that story, but the Gun Barrel Highway is basically you're going across the continent and there's nothing out there.
Is that like Perth to Sydney type thing?
Yeah, it's a big deal. So anyway, she did that when she was about 19. So she's always had this sort of adventurous spirit, and she wanted to do that. So she spearheaded, and I said, "I'm down. Let's do it." And then, I was telling our producers about it, and they're like, "Love it. That's great. Okay, do this." And they gave me a couple of, little GoPros and said, "Film it all." And I said, "Okay." And I had already pitched to them my thinking of what I wanted to do was traveling around the world, talking to people, everyday people, about their local treasure stories and folklore. And because as we've talked about off air, then there's a lot of amazing stories out there. That's why you have the podcast. There's all these amazing people locally, there's stories that need to be told. So when we decided to do this trip, we said, okay, we'll do it, and we'll film it, and we'll do those interviews with people just like I wanted all the way down. And we did. We were 18 months into it.
Wow.
We left Key West January 1 and got all the way to we got to oddly enough Peru, and we were in the Peruvian Andes when COVID hit. And so we were up in the tiny little place called Tarapoto, little eco lodge off in this town. And as soon as we got there, the next morning we woke up and it says, "Have you heard? You can't leave the premises. We're in lockdown." That turned into 40 days. And we were the only ones. Like everyone else that was in this little eco lodge was somewhat local, so they all went back to their places in Peru. We obviously couldn't do that. So we said, we're cool. We'll just wait it out. Well, that went into 40 days, and then the State Department said, "You got to go. This is getting bad, and we're going to fly you out on an IOU." They flew a jet into Tarapoto and flew us out of there.
Wow.
And they said, "Pay us later." And we ended up leaving our bikes fully loaded. I just went there and, disconnected the fuel tanks, dumped all the fuel out, and ran the carburetors dry. But our 2 bikes are still leaning up against an old guy's house in the mountains in Tarapoto, Peru. And I send him $50 a month. And he sends me a picture every once in a while. And we're still in contact. We're hoping to get back there this fall and pick up where we left off and continue the trip. But we had a lot of great experiences, 18 months. We'd get to a town, we fell in love with it, stay there for a few weeks. Colombia, we stayed for like 2.5 months. It was awesome. So it's a great adventure, to be able to travel for work is really a blessing. And
so I need to turn the news off because it sounds scary to me.
That's the best thing. The news is horrible. You want to talk about sensationalism? The news is way more sensationalism than Discovery Channel. Let me tell you, it's ridiculous, the stuff they put out there. Like if you go to Mexico, you're going to die. I had some of the most amazing experiences in Mexico. When we went all through Sinaloa, we went all through these bad parts of Mexico. Hey, there's bad people everywhere.
That's right.
There's a lot of bad people that are killing people right here in this country. I think we should address that before we start, calling other countries bad names. It was horrible. I had the best experiences in Mexico and Colombia, the 2 countries that get the most, the worst rap. And I got to say, we probably spent the most time in both of those countries. We did all of Mexico, all of Baja, all the way down to the bottom of Baja, back up, and then across, and then all of Maine, Mexico. It's wonderful.
Wow.
We could definitely have some bad scenarios. We didn't, fortunately, but I never felt at more risk there than I would here.
Well, you could here, right? You could run into anything anywhere in America.
Going
right?
through Houston, I hated it. I hated going through Houston. I just kept moving. It's like, I didn't like that. So yeah, I think that's unfortunate. The way news really just jumps on a bad story and
they blow it up, and everybody harps on it and tweets about it and texts about it, and it's just really, really bad. And then you find out, no, it's actually a beautiful country. I got to tell you, for me, I've been to Paris twice, and everybody that I've talked to typically is, oh yeah, they don't like Americans. I actually haven't had an issue. I thought they were very nice.
Yeah, I've had great times in Paris.
Oh, it's beautiful, and the world is beautiful. I had a friend who just went to Europe and overseas, I think like 10 different countries on a cruise. I'm like, you're gonna so enjoy it. This world is beautiful.
It is.
People can just like get it. I'm never leaving the country. No, why not? You're missing it because it is unfortunate. Yeah. So, well, thank you so much for coming on. This is awesome. This is a blast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for Jake. You got anything else?
Yeah, actually.
What you got, Jake?
So we talked a lot about the ethics of finding things and claim, but I feel like we only did from the side of the victims of history. I mentioned Native Americans, but let me throw out a kind of weird hypothetical. Let's say you're in Argentina, where the Nazi higher ups fled to, and they have this part of Argentina. I don't know the town name, but pretty much
Mendoza?
Is that it? You're
Some of
familiar?
it.
Right. So
You've seen season 2 of Treasure Quest?
I've not.
Check it out.
Okay. Well, maybe that's just the answer to my question.
Sorry to cut you off. I'm still
No, you're good.
I'm still looking for your question.
But pretty much for anyone that doesn't know, there's this place in Argentina where it's just the most white place ever. Everyone speaks German. You'll go into homes and you'll see Nazi
Very cosmopolitan,
shrines.
European.
Right, memorabilia.
Still today.
Yeah. I think it was Tim Kennedy did a Finding Hitler show on that.
Yep.
But yeah, let's say you're wherever that is, and you want to dig up some Nazi gold, but the local Himmlers aren't so happy with that.
That's a good question.
Where do you go with that?
Yeah, kind of the same thing. The Spaniards and the Nazis, right? Raping and pillaging, taking it from others. A lot of that Nazi gold wasn't Nazi gold originally, was it? Right? They were taking it from other countries. So, it's a tough one to, give you a real short answer. I think that it's really convoluted. You have to kind of get into the situation and then talk to all that are involved and try to come up with the best solution. But I can't say that I wouldn't be a little biased if it was, Spanish colonial government or Nazis. I probably wouldn't be so willing to play with either of them because they were not nice people.
Right.
But
they would probably
my
have
opinion.
Yeah. They would probably have an issue with that,
Sure.
because I guess depending on your perspective, it could just be seen as
It's
sort
true.
of arbitrary.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. And then that's what makes us human. We all form our own opinions. It doesn't mean it's right. So it's a tough question to answer, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
think
I'm definitely putting you on the hot seat, bringing up the Nazis.
Yeah. I mean, we all have this, belief about what the Nazis were doing. But yeah, I think every scenario would have to be looked at and analyzed, and then whoever came forward, then we would discuss it.
Right. So there's no really one size fits all for you. It's
Definitely
a very
not.
nuanced thing.
It is for me. Yeah, very political in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to listen.
Yeah.
But I want to be compensated for if I'm going to do the work.
That's right.
If I'm gonna uncover this history for you and me, then
We got to get something out of it.
I got to get something out of it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So, Jake, folks, Shawn Cowles, I'm going to put a link in the bio and all this stuff when these podcasts come out and everywhere. But this is really cool. ShawnCowles.com.
ShawnCowles.com.
And Treasure Quest, I want to say there were 4 seasons. And just like, check it out. So when I knew you were coming on, and I met you a few months ago, so I started watching, and they're addicting.
Yeah.
You get into it, it's like, oh, what are they going to find next? And it's really, really cool. And I want to say thank you, and I appreciate the moral ethics that you bring and how you pursue this, that it's, it's more to it than just grabbing it and doing my idea of melting it down, which would be stupid.
Right.
It's about history and gathering and maybe getting some compensation along the way, having fun and enjoying it and uncovering history and sharing stories, because those mints right there, that tells a story.
It does.
And so thank you for sharing that. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Ben.
Thanks, Shawn.
It's been a great time.
Thank you.